Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining RPI Consultants Lawson Technology panel today. I'm your host, Justin Braun, and I'm super excited to welcome my esteemed RPI colleagues who have all assembled to share our RPI experience with you today. Today we have Jonathan Gustafson, Chris Rosen, Sherry Brewer, Tom Severson, Sherry Nettles, Mike Laskin, and of course, Michael Graves. Welcome, team. Thanks, everyone, for joining. We've got a bunch of cool talking points based on common client questions that we see out there in the wild, in the real world, project challenges, operational challenges, and we're happy to answer specific questions after we get through our initial dialogue. Please use the questions box in On24 to submit a question. And let's go ahead and jump into our first topic, which involves a change on the event horizon in the way Lawson updates their system. So as you all of your version 10 clients know, version 10's been out there for about 8 years, and Lawson generally produces these ESP level updates that get applied once or twice a year by your organizations. Those can be pretty heavy, pretty cumbersome. In fact, we've engaged with many clients to help test those ESP applications. And on the other hand, Landmark, for you Landmark, Global HR, CloudSuite Financial clients know that the update cycle is much more frequent and much less disruptive. We understand that Infor is transitioning their LSF update model to the CU update model, similar to the Landmark, or even the way that your smartphone gets updated at night without even asking for it. So John, what can you share with our clients in the audience about that system admin experience for ERP support managers around this new update model?
Yeah, thank you, Justin. So the Infor Lawson System Foundation, or LSF, versions 10.0.11, 10, and 9 technology platforms for on-premise deployments will start transitioning from the current individual patches and ESP patches to the customer update release framework, like you had mentioned. Infor actually started delivering these customer updates for version 10.0.11 back on May 15th. The second customer update was on July 29th, and the third one was on September 24th. In version 10.0.10, they started doing this in October. And version 10.0.9, they started on December 1st. The next customer updates will actually be released quarterly in the months of February, May, August, and November. Infor, of course, may provide additional customer updates if needed to deliver critical product fixes. The reason that Infor made this change is because over time, as many of you have probably realized, the size and the number of files delivered in these patches have grown extremely large. And so basically, Infor was delivering full base product just for a single patch. The move to customer update model helps streamline the delivery of product fixes and enhancements by consolidating all the patches into a CU instead of individual patches. An Infor LSF customer update may include one or more of the following: product fixes, new features, or added support for new third-party products. Additionally, this change aligns Infor LSF with the other Infor products, such as Landmark, that follow the customer update release model. A few important notes about applying these updates. There are KB articles out there that are linked to each one of your core versions, and those KB articles will tell you what the schedules are going to be for when those updates are going to be available. The updates are cumulative, so if you missed an update, you do not need to apply all of them. You can just apply the latest update. Since the updates have multiple patches in them, you'll need to make sure that you read the release notes and the update notes so that you are aware of exactly what is being updated. You need to apply the customer updates for Infor Mingle or Portal, as well as Design Studio. It's very important that those go along with the customer updates for LSF. The steps to install the customer updates are basically the same as applying the environment service packs. You're going to basically be doing a full install of the product, so you will need to schedule downtime to install these updates. As far as where to find these customer updates, if you go out into the support site, you will go to the Download Center, Technology, Lawson System Foundation, and that's where you'll find these updates. If you do need older releases, they are in the Release Archive tab. And then last, it'll be very helpful for you to go download a new updated version of your installation guide for your base environment version, 10.0.11 or 10 or 9. They have all been updated with the instructions on how to install. the customer updates.
Thanks a lot, John. Mute check for everybody. We all know the importance of keeping our Lawson systems up to date. And I got to say, there's just something really comforting about hearing your Minnesota accent come through talking about Lawson systems. So, you know, one of the great benefits of RPI's growth has been finding that balance between working with our clients and our partners to keep their system up to date, while also balancing that on the demands of the business and, you know, keeping the operation running. And one of the great offerings that we've been able to bring to our clients is managed services. And we've been joined by Chris Rusin, and Chris is going to tell us a little bit about some of the typical requests that we help our clients with as in this new managed service offering that has really been a part of the RPI experience only for the last 5 or 6 years or so. So, Chris, take us away.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Justin. Yeah, so we get numerous types of requests every day through managed services, tickets that come in. But generally, all of those requests can be kind of grouped into 3 different buckets. So bucket 1 is going to be what we call break fix requests. These are items that create system downtime or process failure for clients, things that we need to jump on right away to kind of make sure that they get back up and running. Some things that we've seen have been job or interface errors, performance issues, overall system slowness. We also get a lot of questions, related to how-to, so functional help. We'll reach out to other colleagues at RPI to help clients, fix things that may have been keyed in wrong or things of that nature. The second bucket tends to be what we consider enhancement requests. These are things that aren't necessary to keep the system up and running, but things that just make life a little easier for our clients. So things that we've seen along this line include reporting, so crystal reports, list views, or otherwise. These can be net new reports that clients want to have to make things a little easier, or updating something that may have fallen out of date in recent times. Another one that we see quite often are employee space updates. So for payroll, and the big one is really open enrollment. So clients will reach out to us about updates to kind of help streamline that process, make it a little easier for the user. And the last one is automation requests. So, once a client is on the system and everything's running, they'll get into it and think, if I could automate this process, it would make my life so much easier. It's a lot of manual that we can help take away. So they'll create requests for that for us as well. And last is the third bucket, which are probably our most common requests and things that you would associate most with managed services. And those are your preventative tickets, regular system admin tasks. These can be application updates, so things with the CUs that John just mentioned. Other applications, we deal a lot with BSI and data refreshes as well for our on-premise clients. Another responsibility that we kind of take on is some monthly maintenance. So in those windows that we coordinate with the client, we'll move work units to history, as well as cleaning up log and temp files. And then finally, kind of a big one recently that has kind of been brought on by Infor has been really helping our clients with the move from Mingle 11 to Infor OS, as well as ADFS and LDAPS.
Thanks a lot, Chris. Appreciate you being part of the team and bringing that vision of managed service into reality and working with our clients on those issues. LDAPS kind of caught my attention. I know that that's featured on a lot of our managed service client update calendars. Part of our service delivery is helping folks anticipate those types of updates and planning for them. And we're very fortunate to be joined by the esteemed Sherry Brewer, who's done this configuration change for many of our clients. And Sherry, would you mind telling us just a little bit about that effort in particular, please?
Yeah, sure. I have done many, and last year, as most people know, Microsoft released an advisory that recommended any applications that use LDAP connections to Active Directory or ADLDS be converted to LDAP-S. They were supposed to release that back in March of 2020, but then they pushed the date, and they still haven't actually published a date as to when it will be released. However, if Microsoft does in fact release the patch and you don't have LDAP-S in place, there will be issues with your system. First, the LASI process on LSF will not start, so LSF will not start. The second would be that any service that uses LDAP bind you would not be able to log in. And third, IFS would not be able to sync users from Active Directory. So it's pretty important to have LDAP-S in place in case they do release the update. You have to gather a few things. To get the process started, you'll need your SSO config password, you need your LDAP bind user ID and password, and of course you need 2 SSL certificates, one from the ADLDS server, which is typically your LSF server, and then one from the AD server. That can be either a wildcard certificate or a domain controller certificate. Typically, I get it from the AD administrator, but you can also run an open SSL command to grab it. But just note that that can cause issues just because of configuration. If they have more than one DC and you have only that one DC certificate and that were to fail, you'd run into issues. So a wildcard cert might be more beneficial in that case. And typically I just, like I said, go with the AD administrator because the configurations can vary. It's done in 2 pieces, usually the ADLDS certificate and then the AD certificate. It doesn't matter which order, it's just good to make sure you have one working before you go to the other. That way, if there are any issues, it's easier to determine where the problem lies. And then for each certificate, the AD and the ADLDS, you need to install it in the WebSphere console under the No Default Trust Store and the Cell Default Trust Store. And you also need to install them in all of your WebSphere Java CA cert files and your OS Java CA cert files. So the AD cert needs to be installed on the Landmark and LSF server, whereas the AD LDS certificate only needs to be installed on your LSF server. So for AD LDS, once all the steps are completed, after you followed all the steps in the guide, you would update the authentication data store in SSO config. And for AD LDAP-S, it's updating the LDAP bind service in SSO config on LSF, and also updating the login scheme bind properties in Landmark Rich Client. Finally, the last piece is updating IFS. Here, the root certificate from the Active Directory cert is needed to be installed on the IFS server. Once that's installed, then you can update the parameters for AD to point to the secure port, and then you can sync your users. Once restarted, you can then do a sync to make sure it's working. A couple of the gotchas that I've run into doing these is if you're running Java 1.8 or higher, the subject alternative name on the certificates, the SAN, has to have the IP address along with the DNS name, otherwise it won't work. And it has to be pretty specific. It's DNS name equals the server name and IP equals the IP address. Otherwise, it just won't fly. Also, one other thing I run into a lot is after you make all the changes, you restart everything and you log into Portal, you get an error that says the profile service returned an error. To resolve that, you need to enable and update the SSL cipher suites in your LSF server. There's a KB article out there with the instructions and an attachment on how to accomplish this. It's super simple. You do a restart and then typically everything's fine. If you want to look, search in the KB for LDAP-S, there's about 6 articles that has pretty good understanding of all of this, and hopefully it'll get you started. But this just is a big overview and hopefully just gives you a better understanding. That's it.
Sherry, you're a natural. Thank you so much. You want to turn your camera off and just do a good webinar fist pump there. That was putting the sunshine in LDAP-S.
Yeah, right.
I love the floor in the background too. I can feel the warmth from here. So we're going to shift gears and talk about another administrative task. This one's a crowd pleaser, archiving, right? So especially you version 10 clients that are hanging on, you know, you've got lots of years of data in your system, and pruning that, the various database repositories and older data is, you know, it's something that needs to be done. And with spring on the horizon, we've invited Mr. Tom Severson to talk a little bit about some of the strategies clients can use to archive the old data.
Thank you, Justin. Yeah, like Justin said, there's archiving as a strategy, but there's also purging as a strategy. And I'll be talking a little bit about both strategies to remove your historical non-transactional data from your transactional system. So both strategies are valid depending on the goals of your organization. In an archive strategy, the goal is to extract that historical information, non-transactional information, out of your transactional system and put it into another reporting or query-only type system. On the other side of the coin is the purged strategy. So purge strategy simply deletes your historical information from your transactional system. So once it's purged, it's no longer available for anybody to pull up and report or query for the data. So reasons you might want to archive or purge your data, we're finding the main driver is for your transactional system performance. So at the database level, things like you know, your indices and doing queries, or if your users are going through a great volume of data to do some manual searching. By removing that historical information out of your transactional system, they're not bogged down in that transactional system by data that, you know, they're not going to be doing any transactions against. We also find that there's huge performance gains both in migration and upgrades when it's time to upgrade your Infor version. If you are upgrading or migrating smaller sets of data, it typically goes a lot faster and a lot smoother. The second reason a lot of people are going in and archiving and purging is cost. Infor really right now is kind of focusing on a hosted solution. So they're cloud-based solutions. There are also some older clients that are also in a hosted environment. Now, in a hosted environment, part of your cost typically is based on how much space you are using, how much disk you're using. And as your database grows and grows and grows, those costs grow as well. So by removing that information out of your transactional system, it gives you some cost-saving benefits where you're not going to be charged for the extra data storage because you don't have that extra data. The last reason people are really kind of going into archiving and purging more than anything, is a legal reason for doing so. So there are legal requirements based on your industry, how long you keep data. So whether it's financial data or HR data, you know, there are different rules legally on how long you have to keep information. Now, a lot of companies out there just never delete the information, so they just keep that around. The important thing to know, and it's hit a few companies here lately, is any of that old data is admissible in court. So you can be subpoenaed if you've got, you know, 40-year-old data. You can be subpoenaed for that data, and that can and will be used against you in a court of law. So a lot of folks right now are developing what is called a defensible deletion policy. So a defensible deletion policy basically is a policy that your organization follows to the letter, so it's not arbitrary. And it's something like, in the financial area, any record over 10 years is purged from the system quarterly. Now, by having that, it is defensible for your organization on why that information was deleted. It's our policy. Legally, we have to maintain it for 10 years, so we delete everything quarterly, 10 years and older within our system. So it's defensible in court. So you can't be accused of, you know, randomly going out and eliminating evidence. So that's kind of the legal reason to go ahead and delete information out of your system or purge information out of your system. Now, some of the tools out there for archiving and purging, Infor itself has some purge applications, and they've relatively recently added the ability to archive as well. Now, the archive solution will spit out the data into a flat file or a text file for storage reasons. So you can archive it and then purge using the Infor programs. You can also contract with a consulting firm like RPI to do some targeted archiving or purging within your system. There are some third-party archiving solutions out there in the industry. We also see a few people going in, a few companies going in with a pretty savvy IT team, and they are doing kind of a homegrown purging or archiving solution. And then we've also seen some folks, usually around an upgrade or whatnot, they'll take the old system that they are upgrading from and they'll freeze it, and they're using that kind of as a historical reporting solution. So there's pros and cons to each one. What you need to do as an organization is really kind of look at the goal, why you're doing the archiving or purging, look at the capabilities of your organization to be able to accomplish those goals, and really kind of look at some of the challenges that are in an archiving or purging type solution. Now, the challenges that we see, the first and foremost is data integrity. So these data structures that Infor has, they're pretty complex. So there are a lot of conditions that will flag a record as being able to be purged outside of the date parameters that you would be specifying. So for example, a purchase order has to be closed and fully received in order for you to be able to delete that. So there's behind the scenes conditions that, you know, are needed for referential integrity of your data. Also, very rarely do data elements in Infor exist in one specific table. There's a lot of related data that may or may not be needed to be copied over into your archive environment or purged from your transactional system. By not knowing all of the different ins and outs behind the application logic, behind the referential or behind the related structures within the database, you really run the risk of having orphan records, incomplete data, which really can wreak havoc on your reporting out of your transactional system and or your archive system. The second thing is the reporting and querying. If you are taking data into a non-Infor type environment, it's going to be on the solution or your team to develop the reporting and develop the queries to be able to extract the data out. In the case of using Infor, for example, to spit out some flat files with the data, you're going to have to come up with a solution of getting that information into a format that you can actually do some reporting or querying on. And then, of course, like we talked about with the data integrity, you have to know the structure and everything to be able to make sense of that data. And then the last thing that we see kind of some people struggling with is cross-data set reporting. So depending on your archive solution, if it's not all going into one environment, if you're taking archive data, depending on when you do the archive, into multiple environments, there's reporting across the different environments. Or quite frequently too, if you are doing any type of reporting that you want to include current data, of course, then you have to cross the environments from your transactional system to get the data elements out, and also in your archive system. So really, you know, those are some of the things to think about as you look at your organization, look at your reasons for archiving and purging, and deciding on which solution. Thank you.
Dig it. Thanks so much, Tom. Appreciate you joining us and sharing some of your experience on archiving and purging strategies. Definitely some near-term benefits, as well as setting the stage for a more efficient migration to the next generation of Infor products. Really cool stuff. So we're going to switch gears and ask John to speak a little bit about another next generation product, and that's Mingle 12. John, can you tell us a little bit about Mingle 12?
Yeah, so Mingle 12 is the newest version of the Infor user interface, and it's actually been around since 2017, so it's been around for a while. There are a lot of great features that really make it worth your time and energy to upgrade to this newest version. Some of those features, my personal favorite is it does not use SharePoint, so no longer do you have to worry about maintaining a SharePoint instance just for Infor, so they removed that requirement. Another one is that it is actually the same UI that is being used in all the latest versions of Infor. So the multi-tenant cloud environments use this version, and you can use it yourself with your on-premise environment. This gives you an opportunity to get used to the user interface while using your current applications before you make the move into Infor HCM, Infor Financials, or Infor Supply Chain Management. Mingle 12 has a redesigned visual appeal. So you'll notice when you use this version that the text is larger, especially if you're using Portal still. You're able to use different themes such as light, contrast, or dark backgrounds, and the design is responsive. What I mean by that is that the size of your windows will actually change based on what display you're using. So you'll be able to see the information just as easily on a smartphone as you would on a large monitor. If you also upgrade to the 10.1 version of Portal, then you'll see that the screens will actually take up that whole window. The other great benefit of this is that your drill arounds can now be sorted however you want, and it can be exported to a CSV file. So some really great features there that are coming because of Mingle 12. The display of the UI has changed so that the application menu is up in the upper left-hand corner, and actually it just shows the icons for the different applications when you want to see them. This allows your applications to use up more of your screen. And then the last great feature is customizable home pages. So you can have your home page show you information that's important to you, as well as allow easy access into different parts of many applications. There's some things to consider when you're planning on upgrading to Mingle 12. First is that you will need to install this on its own Windows server, so you'll need to provision another server for it. It will require a fairly high amount of memory. At RPI, we recommend using 32 gigs of memory to start. You will need to have ADFS configured in order to use this, and you will need to be using a SQL server. Mingle 12 is part of the Infor OS product, so you'll actually be installing Infor OS. In addition to Mingle 12, you'll also get access to Infor Document Management, ION, and the Infor Federation services. And this leads me to the 5 steps that we recommend that you do to plan for upgrading to Mingle 12. First and foremost, you're going to need to contact Infor and request a license for Infor OS. They do have a no-charge light version that will get you the basic version of these features, and it's a great way to try the features out. And then, of course, there is also a full version of the license that does require a fee to purchase. You'll most likely need to update your current LSF portal and application versions. There is a knowledge base article out there that shows the minimum versions of everything that's needed in order to use Mingle 12. Third, you'll need to configure ADFS if you do not already have that configured in your environment, and that is something that RPI has helped many clients with. Fourth is installing Mingle 12 on its new server. And then the really cool step, the last step, is to start using it gradually. A nice feature is that you can run Mingle version 11 that you're currently using and version 12 at the same time. You'll simply just have your users go to a different URL for Mingle 12, and this way they can slowly acclimate to the new UI. At some point, you will want to decommission the Mingle 11 server so that you're just running the one version, but this gives you the ability to determine when you want to do that. So as you can see, Justin, there are many key benefits to upgrading to Mingle 12, and there is a little bit of planning required before you actually perform the upgrade.
Awesome. Thanks for laying out the 5 steps to sanity there. And I love the last one, sort of the migrated role in the new product. It's neat how Mingle allows you to do that. You know, really.
Yep, it's definitely nice.
Level. Really cool. Thanks again, John. So we're in the home stretch here, and we're gonna shift to a larger topic just around business process automation, something that we've been very passionate about at RPI since I began 13 years ago now. And we're gonna start with something near and dear to the RPI historical experience, and that's AP automation. And we've invited Sherry Nettles, who's got a great track record of doing AP automation with many different solutions. She works very closely with our CPA practice out of Kansas City that deals with some of the imaging automation products. And she's also worked on several new CloudSuite projects. So Sherry, thanks so much for joining us. Can you just tell us a little bit about why you're so passionate about AP automation?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. Thanks so much, Justin. I'm really excited about AP automation because it's an out-of-the-box solution that's really easy to configure. Like Justin said, I'm an application consultant. I'm not a technical person like all the other bright people on this call, and I can actually configure it myself, which I think is really huge. Being able to configure an application as an end user or a system user, to me, I think is really, really beneficial. So what I love about AP automation, one of the many things, as Justin said, is I can configure this to do pretty much anything an organization would need it to do. So what it uses is behind the scenes Infor process automation, or IPA flows, that allow you to design these invoice approval hierarchies within the application that automatically move invoices through the application, through that approval hierarchy. You're allowed to set automated timeouts. You can actually assign a proxy if you're out of the office. So you need to assign someone to approve an invoice in your place. You're able to do that. And if someone doesn't approve within that time limit, it automatically escalates to the next level approver. Now, why that's super valuable is it gets your invoices into a release state sooner, which gets the payment out the door way quicker than we're able to do today without automation. Now, why that's beneficial is we can then realize those vendor discounts that many of us are missing out on because it's taking, way longer than 10 days to get an invoice into the system and out for payment. So that's really going to save your organization a lot of money. And in most cases that we've priced out for customers, the savings in the first year that you realize on vendor discounts more than pays for the cost of doing the AP automation project, which is really huge and very easy to document, believe it or not. So by utilizing this automation, these invoices are getting to payment much faster, like I said. The other huge benefit is Infor document management. So now in CloudSuite, we have what's called IDM or Infor document management that can actually store your invoice images within the application. So we don't need any more fancy programming to kind of pull images out of OnBase or ImageNow or other automated solutions that people might have for imaging. We can actually store those within the application very easily, which then gives your end users the ability to see invoice information at their fingertips, which, as we can imagine, that's super powerful because then your department heads aren't needing to call your AP department to get information. They're able to go into the application directly, inquire on a transaction, and click a button to pull up an image. That's super powerful. So as you can see, there are many things to be excited about with AP automation. Like Justin said, I've implemented for many customers. The solutions are amazing. They're game changers for your AP department. They save so much time and effort. There's also collaboration built into the application that lets your AP team collaborate with your supply chain department within the application. So you're not trying to keep track of emails back and forth to each other about problems. You can actually collaborate within Infor and keep track of the entire dialogue on a conversation about issues with an invoice or a purchase order or a matching problem, what have you. So that's some of the several reasons why I'm excited about AP automation. So thanks for letting me talk about it, Justin.
All right, thanks for bringing some functional love to this otherwise tech-heavy audience or panel.
You bet.
Sherry,
thanks.
Those wins you get out there with AP automation. And
thank you.
Next stop on the automation tour, we're going to talk about a great tool that you all know, Infor Process Automation, IPA. We've had several talks about how it can be used as a very effective integration engine as well as a process automation tool. And we've invited Mike Laskin, who hails from Seattle, Washington, to share some recent wins that he's had using IPA as an interface development tool, specifically around PGP encryption. Go ahead, Mike.
Thanks, Justin. So as we have seen, many organizations now are using Infor Process Designer as an interface engine. Now that's because IPD provides many ways to efficiently extract information or import data into the Lawson system to and from third-party vendors. Now for interfaces, during the design and development process, we always put a lot of emphasis on the file contents, the way those files are formatted, and how efficiently these interfaces run. However, it's just as important to put an emphasis on what happens to those files and that data while it's in transit. Because oftentimes these files contain personal or confidential information about employees, security is, and as it should be, a top priority. To address that, most files are being sent via SFTP. However, it's possible to add another layer of protection to your data, all from within IPA. Now, IPA makes it very easy to both encrypt outbound files that we're sending from Lawson and decrypt inbound files that we're receiving from our vendors. To do this, we don't need any additional third-party software. Infor provides a built-in way to either create a key pair or import an existing key that was sent to us by a vendor. Now, keys are stored in the Gen data area in Landmark as security services. For outbound interfaces, Landmark is able to generate a new PGP key pair. Now, once that key pair is generated, an administrator can go in and download the public half of that key pair to send to vendors for those vendors to use to encrypt files that they are sending to us. The private key, however, is not available to download. Now, this is done to ensure that these files can only be decrypted and accessed by the landmark system and IPA flows. This way, no one else can see the sensitive information other than the people in our organizations. Now, for outbound interfaces, on the other hand, we can upload a public key that we receive from vendors that will be used to encrypt files. Now, we're not limited, and multiple key pairs and services can be created to accommodate any interfaces that we're using. This way, there's this additional layer of protection on top of secure file transfer that can be used for any interfaces that are built with IPA.
Nice job, Mike. Thanks so much for sharing. Now we're really going to open the scope of automation up to a world where anything is possible, a world that involves robots. IPA is a great automation tool when you're kind of within the system of Infor. But one of the neat things that robotic process automation tools that are starting to grab a foothold in our market do is they extend beyond the Infor application. So we've invited one of our most prolific thought leaders on this topic, the tech pro unicorn himself, Mr. Michael Grace, is going to talk about RPA and how that fits into our emerging strategic services offering here at RPI. Go ahead, Mike.
Awesome. Thank you, Justin. I jokingly like to say it's the coolest tech. It falls into that category of artificial intelligence. It's got a lot of coolness to it for sure. The tagline that we attach to it is the who to your what. So if ERP is what we're going to be doing and CloudSuite is what we're going to be operating in, who does the work in that is really where RPA comes in as your digital workforce. So you can have humans or you can have robots and digital labor. So we're really starting to see it take off. We're about 15 years behind our friends across the pond over in London, but here in the US, it's really starting to take off, mostly in manufacturing, healthcare, financial services, and the service sector is really where it's getting a lot of traction. And the reason it's relevant to what we're talking about today is because where it's most often being utilized is in back office operations, HR, supply chain, finance, anywhere that you have a human going and doing a task, go get put, we call it, a robot can do that. So if you're punching out to a third-party website, maybe to pull down financial statements, to do your cash reconciliation, a robot can do that. Oh, and the robot can also put the items into Excel for you, do that compare for you, match the items that balance, and then send you just the exceptions. So you're doing more exception management instead of spending 15 minutes a day trying to reconcile your cash. It's got applications all over the ERP landscape. We're working with several large health systems on it today. And the most common question we get is, where do I start with this? And I like to say you start at the beginning or you start at start. And people kind of go, what, crazy unicorn, what are you talking about? But really we start with the strategy, right? We start with understanding what the problem is. What are we trying to leverage the tool for? Because that drives what type of tool we need. Do we need a hammer or do we need a screwdriver? There are literally now almost approaching thousands, but definitely hundreds of RPA tools out there. The leading tools are UiPath, Automation Anywhere, Blue Prism, Kofax, NICE. These are some of the names you'll see. And it's important to remember that those vendors only want to sell you licenses, right? That's the only way they make money. So they want to sell you 5 packs and 10 packs of robots. What we want to do is transform your business process and enable your employees, to go do more valuable add things to help your business. So, we always say, let's do strategy first. Let's understand what we're trying to solve. Let's get a hammer or a screwdriver, depending on what we're trying to do. Let's select the right tools. Let's create a backlog. Let's understand what that value is that this tool is going to bring to your organization. And then let's hold ourselves accountable before we get started to make sure that we're achieving all those KPIs. Everybody wants to be independent with this tool. Well, the vendor told us we can do it ourselves. Yes, no, maybe. It really depends on who you're bringing to that party. We like to say a path to independence is about 18 months, right? Let us go get the low-hanging fruit for you and get that stuff into production for you. So we're relieving some of that pain that you're experiencing. We're also starting to pay for the program itself. And then let's start really enabling your workforce about 6 months in, start training them, and then we fall into an advisory role where we're kind of out of the picture a little bit. And that's what you want from consultants, right? You want them to go away. RPI has a hallmark of enabling our customers so that we are ingrained in your operation. So people say, when should I do it? Should I do it before CloudSuite, after CloudSuite, during CloudSuite? Yes to all of those, because as long as you're doing it, I kind of don't care where you're doing it. If you really want, a challenge, then try to do it while you're doing CloudSuite, because then we're only touching the processes once, and we're touching it with an eye to leverage the CloudSuite functionality, and again, enable that functionality with RPA. There is a ton of information out there. You're going to get information overload if you search RPA. So I always say, find somebody trusted that you will give you the honest scoop. And RPA is something that RPI is very transparent about. And I love that play on word. We usually say ERP to the power of RPA enabled with RPI equals savings. That's kind of our little moniker, if you will. And how do we do this? We go through a 5-step, what we're calling a worm drive methodology. I can't think of anything cooler to call it than that. And it really starts with a vision workshop, some discovery sessions where we're really understanding your business processes in detail, and then figuring out where we can automate that, coming up with some alignment with the executives to make sure that we're prioritizing the right things, putting that into a roadmap for you so you can budget for it, plan for it, and execute on it so it's actionable, and then partnering with you in what we call realization to go ahead and start achieving that value and achieving those KPIs. So that's a little bit about RPA in a very short period of time. For more information, RPI does sponsor the Tech Pro Unicorn blog. That is out at techprounicorn.com. We're also spinning podcasts faster than the speed of RPA. Those are out there as well, wherever you get your podcasts under Tech Pro Unicorn.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, Michael. That gave a really succinct end to the initial dialogue that we wanted to start here today in the community. We're going to now open it up for questions. We've covered quite a range of topics from, problem solving and managed services and AP automation, IP, PGP, encryption, and everything in between, ending with all the possibilities that robotic process automation brings. So very typical RPI. There's a huge breadth of knowledge and skills, and hopefully you all are able to hang out and answer some questions from our audience, which is who makes this all possible. So thanks everyone for tuning in today. Let's take some questions.
All right, do we have everyone ready for some Q&A on the line?
Yes.
Mike, you out there? Sherry?
Excellent.
We are. Let's queue up some questions. First, this is from an old friend of ours up in the Great White North. Question is, I've heard a version of Infor OS that uses STS instead of ADFS. Is this true? Now that's a juicy one. Let's pass that over to John for the official and maybe even the unofficial answer on that one. Go ahead, John.
Yes, great, thank you. The official answer is yes. If you are running an on-premise environment, you can use Infor OS as STS as your authentication. I do not recommend it because the performance, we have found that the performance can be a little bit slower, and you're introducing another layer of where some issues could potentially happen. So we recommend that you install ADFS, and really, if your end goal is at some point in time to possibly end up in the cloud, you will need to be on ADFS at that point in time. So our recommendation is just go ahead and install the ADFS now and get the little bit better performance, but also have you prepared for moving to the cloud.
Well said. Anything else to add from anyone else on the call? Our webinar today?
I think you got it.
Okay. Beauty. Moving on. John, I think this one might be in your wheelhouse too. Would you recommend applying every customer update when they are released, or would you just wait and apply them until you need an update to fix the issue? Sort of preventative versus proactive maintenance. What's your philosophy there, John?
I would definitely say, being that these are environment patches, I would strongly recommend installing each of them as they come out. Typically, the testing cycle of testing an environment patch is going to be much smaller than testing a new maintenance service pack for your application. You're going to see the release notes, and if you look through the release notes that are out there, each of these updates typically only have a fairly manageable amount of changes that are coming in, and so your work effort is going to be fairly minor. So I would strongly recommend installing each version as they come out. Plus, there could be some security-related updates, so it'll be very important to make sure that you have those installed. So if it's at all possible, I would plan on just incorporating that as a quarterly exercise to get these environment customer updates installed.
Awesome. Thank you.
And then also an important thing to know is if you are in Infor's cloud environment, patches are automatically installed. You don't have a choice to not take them. They're automatically installed monthly, mid-month. If you do happen to have what they call a non-production environment, so this is kind of a pre-prod environment, those patches hit that environment 2 weeks early for you to go in and test and preview. So that's kind of the difference between an on-premise patch application versus the Infor Cloud patch application.
Good input, Tom. Yeah, it kind of closes that window with that pre-prod environment to force you to do your testing if you're going to. You've got about a two-week ticker on that one, eh? Okay.
Yep.
Excellent. Here's one for the LDAP-S. Is there a specific format required for the certificates?
Hey, yeah, there actually is. Only for the ADFS certificate, that needs to have a private key, so it has to be in the PFX format. But as far as the AD certificate, it does not. I mean, you can do a private key, but you don't have to. So it's really just the AD LDS certificate from that server that would need that private key. Other than that, you should be all set with a regular .cer file.
Right on. Very good. Michael Grace, about how expensive is this RPA robot you speak of?
It's the future. It's the future. So that's a great question. It's, they are affordably priced, especially in comparison to other enterprise technologies. A robot license is probably in the $15,000 to $20,000 range for a production robot. And then if you add consulting, that can range anywhere from $8,000 for maybe a small simple process, up to probably the $25,000 to $30,000 for our big, hairy and scary, very complex, lots of integration type of processes. So, and each robot, again, it's important to remember, can take many processes, if not tens, if not hundreds of processes, depending on the size. So, for a $15,000 to $20,000 investment, plus a little bit of consulting, you can start getting some productivity gains, and you can get them fairly quickly. From the time of the purchase of the license to implementing it is days. It's not some complex process. So relatively cheap and relatively fast to get into production. Great question.
Oh, great answer. I'll go get one myself.
There you go.
All right, last call for questions, folks. This has been a great way to spend a Friday afternoon. There's one more question in queue, so I'll just give it a few more moments if anyone else wants to trickle in questions. And Sherry, I hope you don't mind. I think I'm gonna go ahead and take this one. It says, AP automation. Can I integrate my current document imaging solution with the Infor AP automation that Sherry spoke about? The answer is yes, you absolutely can. As Sherry said, Infor document management is available as the image repository, but it's not required as the image repository. So if you happen to be running Receptive OnBase or really any image repository software, then you're ready to go with Infor process automation and the AP invoice automation functionality that comes with CloudSuite. Great question. Now, if you happen to be mature in an image system implementation for AP automation, you have all of your workflow routing happening, you know, pre-upload of that invoice record into your ERP, then, you know, just understand that would all become effectively obsolete. You would replace that feature functionality with the CloudSuite AP automation functional routing logic, which has some short-term and long-term benefits associated with it. But just to clarify that you would continue to use the image repository, you would move the business logic of the invoice approval or other AP automation workflow tasks into the ERP system of record. And I believe that's it. I believe that is all the questions we have, which I think is an ode to our presenters. Thank you guys and gals so much for your contribution to our community today and sharing your knowledge and sharing your time with us. Quick round of applause, and we'll go ahead and call it a day.